I'm Devin. Okay. So again, I'm Devin. I'm going to be your speaker tonight. I work for PM ProLearn, authorized training provider. So I teach PMP courses. I teach DA courses. I help out with our Safe and Lean Six courses when they pop up. But I am more in the consulting side of our business now. And Discipline Agile is kind of the entire reason I moved to PM ProLearn, because the other company I was working for wasn't really interested in pursuing it at all, and I already had the certification. Like at the time, it was the Discipline Agile Lean Scrum Master. So I moved over to them, and they let me kind of build a program over there, which is cool. I have a Master's of Science in Project Management from George Washington University, which basically just means I know how to analyze a lot of data. Like that's really all that means, because turns out that's what a Master's of Science in Project Management is, basically just data analysis. Luckily, I'm a nerd, but yeah, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I was in the Navy for 9 years in nuclear power. I got into project management just so I didn't have to stay in nuclear power. So I like the freedom that this job gives me and this industry kind of gives me. And thank you guys for being here tonight. I'm always terrible about talking about myself. I'll remember something that's going to be pertinent to us. Okay. Sorry about that. It'll do it.
Oh dear. Does Devin sound like a robot to anybody?
Hey, so
you're good. You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes when I share my screen, Zoom will just quit.
Yeah. All we're seeing is Devin has started sharing his screen. So if you want, I can go ahead and put up the PowerPoint for you if you want to stop sharing.
Hopefully I'm back.
Yes, you're back.
So since I updated Zoom, it's been doing that to me.
So I am working on pulling up your PowerPoint right now.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah. So usually once it quits, and completely kicks me out, then it's fine.
Of course.
Yeah. Don't know why that's happening. It's only since I did the last update. So sorry about that. But like I was saying, I am really bad about talking about myself. So I'm sure that I'll remember something about myself or, something relevant as I'm talking. But this is really just meant to be a kind of an overview of the toolkit. You guys can see the presentation, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So this is not in any way meant to be, kind of angling in on PMI's, their territory as far as where they're trying to monetize DA. Because if you look on their website, there's a course called The Basics of Discipline Agile, and I forgot about that existed when I named this presentation. So this is not the same thing as that. I just want to be clear about that so I don't get in trouble with the powers that be. But basically what we're going to go over is we're going to go over the mindset of Discipline Agile. And we're going to work that into just the layers, the 4 layers of Discipline Agile. We'll talk about the process blades, and then we'll go into one of them specifically, the Discipline Agile delivery process blade. And we'll talk about process goal diagrams and how to read those. Because if you've never taken a course through DA, it's sometimes difficult to even get started reading those things and figuring out what it's actually showing you. So in that area, I'm actually going to show you on the PMI website where you can find all this information for free since you guys are all members, and how to use what they call the Discipline Agile browser, which is a really nifty tool that has the entire toolkit available for you to just click through and everything. And then we'll basically talk about how to apply, how to start down the road of applying this. Okay. I left this very broad and very short on purpose so that if you guys have questions or you have specific things you want to ask me about, feel free, basically. Okay. All right. So again, quick note on some copyright stuff. This all belongs to PMI, along with some of the diagrams and everything I'm going to show. You can go to their website to find any kind of information you need about this. This is not supposed to be any kind of certification class or compete with PMI in any way. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I've said enough to not get in trouble. So we're going to start off with the mindset, like what makes disciplined agile different from everything else. Okay, and when I was thinking about how to answer that question, I kind of started thinking about the mindset, which is one of the areas of disciplined agile that's kind of different. So there's principles, promises, and guidelines. So the principles are the underlying like foundational things that as disciplined agilists we believe in. And based on those principles, we promise to do certain things. And then because of those promises, we have some guidelines that help us as far as like practices to implement those promises. Okay, so we're going to talk through the principles in a good amount of detail, and then I'll just quickly go through the promises and the guidelines, just because really the principles are kind of the core of disciplined agile. The first one is delight customers. Okay, so basically the thought with delight customers, instead of just, oh, we're aiming to satisfy our customers, is like, yeah, if we just satisfy their needs, sure, they get what they need, but will they come back? Right. And if we're only meeting like the bare minimum of what they need, if someone else like goes above and beyond, then we lose that customer. Right. The example that they give in all their course material is like, if you check into a hotel and they have the room you asked for, like, cool, right? But if you check into a hotel and they upgraded you, and when you went in there, they had like a chocolate on the pillow, and you had a note from the manager expressing how they how they appreciate your business and everything, like, you're probably more likely to book with that hotel again, right? Because you're happier about the experience. So we shoot to delight our customers instead of just satisfying them. So to help with that, we want to be awesome, right? That is one of the 8 principles, right? Is being awesome. Basically what that means is we try and be the best we can be for ourselves, for our teams, and we try to constantly improve. Okay, we want to encourage constant improvement. The third and fourth ones are probably the 2 biggest ones that set Disciplined Agile apart from other frameworks, toolkits, whatever you want to call them. Okay, and that is context counts and be pragmatic. So context counts is, hey, every single team, person, organization, project, whatever you want to talk about is different. So we need to understand that, and we need to utilize the tools that work based on that context, right? And you guys were talking about like, yeah, waterfall versus agile based on what the project is. And you guys all get that, hey, not every set of tools is going to work for every single project, right? So this is just, it's baked into DA, where we understand that there could be a bunch of different things we have to try or change about the way we work in order to be effective. Kind of going along with that is being pragmatic. So with Disciplined Agile, we're not shooting to be like perfect. We're not going to talk about how if you're not doing, X, Y, and Z, you're not being agile, right? Anyone ever heard people that like are really into Scrum are the kind of worst I've heard talk about this, but like, well, if you're not doing this, you're not really agile, right? I've heard that a couple times, and that's not what Disciplined Agile is all about, right? Like, all that matters is that you're doing what works. Okay. So we want to be pragmatic in our approach, and we want to make decisions based on what will work for our team, not what is like textbook agile, basically. Okay. Any questions so far? Sweet. Next is choice is good. So we want to choose our way of doing things based on our context and everything. And we want to do it pragmatically, but we can't do that without having choices, So we need to have choices available to us, and we need to know what those choices are. So as discipline agilists, we view things through the lens of like, I should have choices available to me. I shouldn't just have one way of doing things, right? Choice is good instead of just being locked into a path. Next, we got optimize flow. So we need to optimize the flow of our work from team to team in our organization, not just within our team. Okay, so that's where one of those questions was getting at is, if your team is awesome, that's great. But if the team who, has to do something with the information that you provide them isn't also operating at the same like speed as you could just cause a huge backlog of work for them, right? It's just like a Kanban board, but like in like a macro scale. So when we are trying to improve, we want to look at the entire organization and kind of like optimize flow, prioritize optimizing flow for the organization over just our team. Okay. We want to organize around products and services. So what that means is we try and organize our teams around the products and services they're providing to the customer, instead of just having, okay, this is a project team, and then it gets transitioned over to operations for whatever. So basically what we're trying to do is organize our teams so that they are the, Zoom screen sharing team or whatever you want to call that function. I don't know. And they help to, or they're like focused on that, and any improvements to that, they make it. Okay. The last one is enterprise awareness. Okay, enterprise awareness, it relates back to the optimizing flow thing. We want to look beyond our team. Okay, one of my favorite quotes in the Choose Your Wow book, which is the kind of discipline agile handbook, is to improve a system, we have to improve both the parts of the system and the like flow of information between the parts of the system in lockstep. Because every organization is a system, right? It's a collection of pieces that have to work together in order to be successful. So we need to look beyond just one piece of the system. And if we are when we're making decisions, we have to make decisions that work within that system. We can't just decide to do our own thing, right? We have to still follow the rules of our organization. But if we have a recommendation for improvement for the organization, we still have to, make that recommendation and everything. So be aware of the rules that you can work within, but still try and optimize the flow and increase performance as much as possible, right? And those are the principles. Any questions about those principles at all? Cool. So the promises. All right. First one is we promise to create psychological safety and embrace diversity. That helps with the environment that our team works in, right? Like if people feel psychologically safe and we are good at embracing diversity within our teams, then our team's going to work better because the environment's going to be better. We promise to accelerate value realization. So we deliver value as we produce it, right? So that kind of brings us towards practices where we're talking about continuous delivery type setups and everything like that. We promise to collaborate proactively. We are not going to just operate within our own bubble. If we see an opportunity to collaborate with others in our team or with our stakeholders or anyone else, like we're going to like proactively seek that out, make work and workflow visible. That way, one, everyone gets the information they need, and two, everyone kind of knows what's going on and where they can help, right? It helps to increase flow. We improve predictability. We promise to improve predictability. That way our customers know what to expect. We keep workloads within capacity. That way we don't burn people out, right? That one's pretty straightforward. And we promise to improve continuously, right? Based on that whole, being awesome thing. We want to improve continuously. Okay. So the principles kind of inform the promises. The promises tell us kind of how we should act, right? And then the guidelines tell us kind of what we should be doing to help us with that stuff. So we want to validate our learnings. You guys mentioned a couple times that if you're making some sort of improvement, you need the data to back it up, right? So that's what validating your learning is, right? It's like, hey, if I learn something through some sort of either trial and error kind of thing, or just an improvement that I've tried to make, I need to make sure that I'm not just saying it's working, right? You need to validate it. We want to apply design thinking. Okay. We need to attend to relationships through the value stream, right? People are more important than necessarily like the processes they're performing. So try and attend to the relationships there. We want to create effective environments that foster joy, right? That's back to that, psychological safety, embracing diversity thing. Create the environment for your team that makes them want to perform well. Change your culture by improving your system. Okay, so we can try and be the change in an organization by improving the system. Sorry, got tongue-tied there. We create some semi-autonomous self-organizing teams, right? That's a good way to ensure that everyone is able to work effectively on whatever they need to achieve the goal. Adopt measures to improve outcomes, right? The goal should be improving the outcome, not just adopting a measure just because. Leverage and enhance in organizational assets, right? So that means we're going to use the organizational assets to exist, but we're also going to like improve them if we can. Okay. Now, all this leads me to ask, so what? Right? Like, great, those 3 lists of stuff of things. The big takeaways, like the so what, is in discipline agile, you're not doing strict agile. Like the emphasis was off on that. We don't do strict agile here, right? We're just trying to be effective, not necessarily perfect. Okay. So the disciplined part of it is you're disciplined in committing to those promises and the principles and guidelines and everything, but you're not locked into anything, right? We work in a way that allows for long-term team cohesion. If you kind of dive into Discipline Agile, they talk about how a long-term kind of product team is more effective than just putting together project teams, because the team is already, there, as opposed to having to do a lot of that team development up front. And then we use what the organization has and operate within its rules, but we offer feedback and improvements constantly to improve the entire organization. Right. So that's the big one, is we still have to operate within those guidelines, but we want to try and offer some sort of feedback. We want to try and improve as much as we can to help the organization succeed. And like you guys said, that is sometimes a huge challenge, right? So part of that is understanding your organization and how to operate within it in order to actually like get that done. And part of it is just being willing to make those recommendations. Okay. So any questions on kind of the mindset before we actually talk about the nuts and bolts of the toolkit?
No, but welcome to the people who just joined.
Hey guys. All right. So then I keep saying the toolkit, right? Well, so what does that mean? The way that I think about the Discipline Agile toolkit is it's exactly like your toolbox down in your garage, right? So like if I'm looking at my toolbox in my garage, like I've got, a hammer and some wrenches and some screwdrivers and everything. They're all not going to be used all the time. And they're all going to be used best in different scenarios, right? Theoretically, anything is a hammer if you want it to be hard enough, right? Like if you really want it to be. But, there's certain things that are better used to drive nails in, right? Like an actual hammer. So The Discipline Agile Toolkit is really just a collection of tools that you can use based on your situation, right? Like if you're in a certain situation, you have a certain goal you're trying to achieve, you can say, all right, well, let me look in this book or on the website and see if there's any practices they recommend for me to try. Okay, cool. There is. Let's try this thing and see if it works. If it does, great. You know, it's not a set of rules that you have to follow. It's not a framework. Like PMI is really, really specific about the messaging on that. Is they get really specific about, hey, it's not a framework, it's a toolkit, because it's just a collection of procedures that, or it's less a collection of like tools and processes you could use, not just a set of things you have to do. There's 4 layers to this toolkit. Okay, so they all kind of build on each other and they have their own purpose. The first one is the foundation layer. That's the mindset. That's knowing stuff about Agile, Lean, traditional project management, which they call serial, right? Waterfall is serial for Discipline Agile. So if you see that, that's what that is. It's the roles in a Discipline Agile team. It's knowing kind of how to structure your teams. It's choosing your way of working. That's all foundational stuff, right? And we're not going to get too far. We're not going to get into the roles and everything. Basically, whatever roles you're currently using, you can use in Discipline Agile, because the way that this is designed is it's designed to go along with whatever you're already doing, right? And I think it was Marion that mentioned it, is like since you became a Discipline Agile Scrum Master, like you started using some of the toolkit with the stuff you're already doing, right? And that's the way that this is designed to work. It's not meant to replace anything. It's something that you can use to supplement. It's something that you can just use the toolkit if you want to, but if you're already doing something else, cool, just use this with it, right? So that's the foundation. Then we go into these other 3 layers, which have things called process blades in them. Okay, the process blades are those hexagons. Yeah, hexagons, remembering basic shapes. They represent different areas of an organization. Okay, so the first layer, the second layer of the whole toolkit is Discipline DevOps, right? It's streamlining development of a solution, operations, and support. Okay, so it's trying to improve communications between delivering a solution and doing all the support stuff and doing operations and everything else. So in there's 6 process blades. The Discipline Agile delivery is kind of hey, within a solution delivery team, what are the practices we can use? If you guys pick up the book Choose Your Wow or download it from PMI's website, because this is one of those books you can download for free, just like the PMBOK. This is really just talking about Discipline Agile delivery. Okay, this whole book is really just that. The other process blades in this, though, like security, data management, release management, support, IT operations, those are their own things, right? And if you go onto the website, right, like the PMI Discipline Agile website, and you click on any of these process blades, like let's do security, then it walks you through like, hey, how should we, like, what's the mindset to security in a Discipline Agile kind of environment, right? And what are some other kind of resources we can use and everything. So it doesn't get super deep into a lot of them, because they're their own like practices, some of these, right? Like when we talk about, IT operations, like that's a whole thing, but it gives you ideas and ways to apply the Discipline Agile mindset to those areas of your organization. Okay. So that's kind of where those process blades, what those process blades are for. Okay. Above the Discipline DevOps layer, right? So if you take like a Discipline Agile Scrum Master class, you're pretty much just talking about Discipline DevOps. Okay. Once you get into the Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master, or the DASSM, as I heard someone say it, which is one I've never thought about doing that. I've just been DASSM. But once you get into the value stream layer, you're talking about once you get into that kind of course, you're talking about the value stream layer. And that is, all right, now how do I talk about relating the stuff that we do in the DevOps layer to the rest of the organization? And how do I deliver value to our customers? Okay, so that's project or product management, portfolio management, program management. Those are the three that are only in the value stream layer. And then there's some process blades that are shared by the Discipline Agile enterprise layer and the value stream layer. It's basically the connection between the different value streams and the entire organization. Stuff like research and development, business operations, strategy, governance, marketing, continuous improvement, and sales. You can find tips on how to operate a sales organization using the Discipline Agile mindset. Like if you click on the sales process blade, right? So they actually talk about like, how do we approach sales using an Agile mindset, right? And how do I incorporate that with an Agile delivery team and everything like that? And it gives you, links to the National Association of Sales Professionals and some other things. So for those of you who interact with people in those areas of your organization, in just conversation, you can say like, hey, we've started using Agile more, and I think that you guys will probably benefit from it. Here's where you can go for information on it, right? You can start that conversation a little bit. Okay, kind of a cool little thing there. Right. Top layer is the Discipline Agile enterprise layer. It's basically everything else that an organization needs to be able to respond to changes in the marketplace quickly. So that's enterprise architecture, people management, which is HR, information technology, asset management, transformation, finance, vendor management, and legal. And again, those process blades, if you go into those process blades on the website, it gives you tips on how to incorporate that into the Agile mindset, but it's not going to give you a set of practices for HR, right? Like PMI is not going to pretend to be pros in that. So they kind of help you to connect the dots between the Agile mindset and like a good people management strategy, but they don't try and replace any kind of I can't remember, Society for Human Resources or whatever that organization's called. They don't try and replace that. Okay. So talk about process blades. It's just part of your organization's way of working. Okay. So it's basically a process area within the organization. So they each cover a business function, and we are going to give strategies for utilizing that function in an Agile way. Okay. I just heard someone kind of come off mute. Is there a question? Nope, must have been background noise. Okay. Now, most of the project kind of delivery based stuff is in Discipline Agile delivery. Okay. Which is in that Discipline DevOps layer. And those are where the process goals to help us define a way of working for our team reside. And so that's where I'm going to really focus in on. Okay. If you guys want to talk about any of the other process blades, because there's a lot of really cool conversations to be had about those, feel free to ask me about it after we're done here. Like I said, I kind of developed this so that we'd have time to talk about it stuff after, just because this is so wide open. But we're going to start off with, looking at the Discipline Agile delivery stuff, and we're going to look at how to read process goal diagrams. So I'm going to shift over to the PMI Discipline Agile website. And the reason I'm doing this is to show you guys where to find these resources for you to actually use, because that's what matters, right? Is being able to actually use this stuff. So if you guys go to just pmi.org/Discipline Agile, right? Or if you're on PMI's website, you click on that square of things they own. There's the Discipline Agile thing. If you click on that, it'll take you to this website. And it's broken up pretty straightforward. Everything that you could possibly ever want to know about Discipline Agile is on the website. And it's actually just free to the public, most of it. There's one or two things that are PMI members only, but most of it's just available for anyone to look at. So if I scroll down this, the layers of Discipline Agile there, that graph, if I click on any of these process blades, it takes me to that page for that process blade. It's probably the easiest way to navigate most of this. So if you click on Discipline Agile Delivery, it gets you in there. Where I want to show you guys though is if you go over to resources at the top and you go down to the Discipline Agile browser, it's going to take a minute to load. The Discipline Agile browser is an interactive version of the Discipline Agile Delivery process blade and all the process goals within it. Okay. So you have to log in with your PMI account, like again, even though you just came from PMI. But so within Discipline Agile Delivery, there's phases. So there's phases are inception, construction, transition, and then just ongoing, right? Ongoing is not really a phase. It just falls under their collection of phases. So inception phase is you're starting up a project. Construction is you're actually doing the work. And then transition is you're done, you're transitioning it to your customer, or you're transitioning it at the end of an iteration or sprint or whatever you want to call it. So, when you're first starting off a project, one of the things you have to do is you have to think about how we're going to explore scope. Okay. So I look at the explore scope process goal diagram, right? That's a process goal is basically like, I'm trying to do something, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to explore the scope for this thing. Well, one of the things I want to do is I want to explore, I want to figure out how I'm going to manage the backlog. Okay. So I'm going to go to choose a backlog management strategy. Okay. Each of these like points here, these are called decision points. Basically, those are things you're going to have to make decisions about at some point. Like, how am I going to define, the purpose? How am I going to talk about the process? How am I going to talk about user experience? How am I going to manage my backlog? So then if I click on choose a backlog management strategy, the bottom half of this page becomes all the different options for doing that. And then the pros and cons for each of those options. Okay. So this gives you a set of practices that you could use for defining your backlog and managing your backlog, and it gives you the trade-offs for it, right? So that you have information to make decisions. Okay, so some of these are ordered lists. Like for example, this backlog management strategy one is an ordered list. So if you see the arrow there, that means it's an ordered list. So that means that the preferred one is a lean backlog, right? That's kind of like their recommended one, Discipline Agile's recommended one, but that's also taken into like you have to still understand that they expect you to, take context into account and everything. If it's in bold, that means it's usually like the default for a team. So the Agile backlog would be, it's kind of your default one. If I'm going to quality requirements, acceptance criteria would be your default way of defining that, right? So, and then if I look at, I'm going to go back over the lean backlog thing. So if I look at the lean backlog, it tells me like, okay, the trade-offs. Well, it's best where the priorities are changing continuously. It easily supports several work sequencing schemes in parallel, harder to see the work as a single stack, requires discipline to pull new work fairly from the various classes of service. Okay. So that's kind of a possible downside, right? And then it talks about what a lean backlog is. If you want more information, up at the top right here, this additional resources tab, it actually, well, it gives you a book here. There's no link on this one, but some of them have links and take you to a website, or they take you to a book or something like that that you can use as an additional resource to get more information about it. So that's kind of the basics of using this. In construction, you can look at improving quality, accelerating value delivery, whatever you want to look at. One of my favorite ones this actually explicitly brings into play is addressing risk, right? It specifically talks about risk management in an Agile environment, okay, which is something that is sometimes lacking, at least from what I've seen. So it talks about like, hey, how am I going to categorize risks, and how am I going to actually address the threats and opportunities and document them and everything? Okay. So it gives you practices for doing all of that, which is a big deal when you're talking about a team that may or may not have any kind of experience in managing risk, because it actually gives you, the pros and cons for, hey, the ways to document a risk. Nope, didn't mean to click it like that. Sorry about that, guys. If you've never talked about it before, like, this gives you a pretty well-rounded explanation, right? Yeah. Any questions, or is there anything that you guys would want to kind of dig into that's on this that you want to talk? Like, I don't know, is there anything anyone wants to dig in on this, or any questions on this?
I do love this site. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, the browser is really cool because it's so easy to get into.
Well, do you remember when we had, was it Mark Lines
Yeah.
come in? That was really cool when he showed us this too. So, having the guy who wrote the book and created all this come in and tell us about it.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. I had a meeting with him the day before about
Really?
about some of the research I was doing for my master's, talking about risk management in Agile. So yeah, he's a super nice guy, and if you need help, he's actually willing to help people and like meet one-on-one with you. So that's super cool. Might be just because he's Canadian, but I don't know. But this is a very cool site, the browser, and this is actually the most up-to-date thing. So if you're operating off of the book is 5.0, and they've actually updated to 5.3 now. So the most up-to-date collection of practices is on the browser instead of just in the book. Okay, Tina, what's up?
Yeah, and the book is the WOW book. Is that the book we should be starting with?
Yeah, so this is a good one to start with. It's called Choose Your WOW. And I'll actually show you how to get to it on the PMI website real quick. So if you just click on, so if you're on the PMI Discipline Agile page, you click on resources and then go to read, and then Discipline Agile books. Right, so Choose Your WOW. That one you can download for free since you're a PMI member, right? There's also one for executives. That one, for whatever reason, they don't let PMI members download for free. At least they didn't last time I looked. But yeah, this works just like the PMBOK, where you can download it, or you can buy it on Amazon. It's actually a relatively inexpensive book. I think it was like $20. So
Yeah, it's only about $20.
yeah. And then
I will say it's not printed crazy like the PMBOK guide. You can actually read the print.
Yeah.
So true.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. And another kind of an interesting side note is you get a free like PDF copy separately if you sign up for any of the workshops. So, you'll end up with like a couple versions of it if you like download it from PMI and then also take a workshop. So, yeah. Let's see what else. Any other questions, or Marion, is there anything else interesting that I should point out on the website, you think, or?
This, no, and not on the website. I mean, the website's very helpful because when you first start looking at the diagrams, and if you don't know DA, it can be very, very confusing, overwhelming, and you're just going to put it down and not look at it. But once you actually learn what it means, it is one of the most helpful tools that you can put in your toolbox, that you can pull out and say, okay, this is not working for us. So what are some other options? I mean, honestly, I think teams should just have this so that, team leads and people on the project teams can pull this out and say, let's help ourselves. It's very self-serve once you know how to use it.
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things about this is it's very much like teams should have the authority to make choices based on what they're seeing, and then kind of pick a practice that's going to work for them based on like what they're doing. So, depending on what the process goal is you're talking about here, like, let's say we're having an issue with our stakeholder needs are changing, right? So how do I talk about getting requirements from my stakeholders, right? Because whatever we're doing isn't working, right? Well, because I'm just doing iteration demos. Well, why don't we do, interviews? Why don't we do on-demand demos too? Like where we can, have them come in and talk about this whenever we need them to, instead of just the iteration demo. So it's kind of just an interesting thing where it's like, well, I would have never thought about that, So it's cool to have those options presented, and then kind of the explanations and everything of them. So yeah. Anything else? Okay. So then the next thing is, how do we start to apply this? And it's kind of an anticlimactic answer, right? Because the answer is basically just, remember the principles, like be pragmatic. Look at where you're at, see where there's opportunities to maybe use parts of the toolkit to make a decision for your team or with your team that is better than what you're doing now, and try and work towards those improvements. So look at an area where you're struggling in, you can improve in, say, here's our options, then try and evaluate those options and try a few out. If they work, great. If they don't, also great. We either way, we learn something. The thing about using the toolkit though, is because of the way it's laid out and the fact that they actually talk about like the trade-offs, you're more likely to pick a successful option than if you were just like trying stuff without having without knowing what the real choices are, right? Because you know what the choices are and you kind of know where your team's at and everything, you're more likely to pick an option that's going to work the first time, which means we can improve at a faster rate. Okay. And so that's why if you actually do read this book, they'll talk about guided continuous improvement instead of just continuous improvement. And that's just because like it's easier to improve if you either have a coach with a bunch of experience or a toolkit, a knowledge base, basically, that you can make decisions based on. And the knowledge base in this case is cheaper, right? Like than hiring someone to act as a coach. Okay. So, and so I'll kind of like wrap up a little bit with this Walt Disney quote. Now this, interestingly enough, this was actually just in the PowerPoint template. Like this quote was just in the PowerPoint template already, and I just kind of left it in there because it worked out with where we were in the presentation. The easiest way the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Okay. That was Walt Disney. So basically the way you get started is by trying to implement it, right? Don't try and do everything at once. Just take baby steps and work on those improvements, kind of in a, where you need to type of way. Right. So, yeah, that's basically it. So, sorry I didn't talk for the whole hour and a half or whatever we've got set aside for this, but if you need to get in touch with me, military outreach at pmicvc.org. I don't think I actually mentioned that again. I think I forgot to mention it again. I'm the director of military outreach, by the way, for the chapter. So if you're a veteran or anyone who's a veteran, send them to me. I'll give them a free year of chapter membership, basically. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Devin Kleinville I've seen. So yeah.
Mike says, go Navy, beat Army.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep. Go Navy, beat Army. All right. But if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around and talk as much as you guys want to. So.
If you've been interested in DA at all, I can tell you from experience, I took the PMI training, their beta training online, and I found it to be very, very helpful to build on top of my PMP. So PMP, you are just taught, here's the idea of it, here's the frameworks, okay, now go. DA actually gives you tools to walk in and actually get stuff done. So if you've been thinking about adding it to your certificates, I would do it. I would definitely do it. And Devin is going to be the best person to go to, obviously, for recommendations, that kind of stuff. But as somebody who's taken the course, I can attest to it. It was wonderful for me to have.
And I think it was the leadership technology folks. I took the course with them, and they did a good job. And like I said, we're slowly getting there, but they are great tools when we're trying to implement them. So, but I think it was me that said the DA. Devin, you have your Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master, right? Okay, that's what I'm shooting for this year, trying to get. So
Yeah, and I'm about to go. I think I'm going to go in the next couple months and get my Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant, because that's one of those ones that's super interesting to me.
Tina had a question about, is this something that you can study independently, or is it better with a group?
So you can definitely look at it independently and use the toolkit. If you're talking about certification wise, so I didn't study with anyone when I was studying for the certifications. And they run this certification in a kind of loose fashion compared to the PMP.
the first, what's the first exam is not proctored or anything. So
so the exams aren't proctored, and you can kind of take them through an online portal whenever you want. So part of the reason for that is, and this came from Mark Lyons, is they don't expect you to know every single thing in the toolkit, right? They expect you to know the mindset and be able to navigate the toolkit, because Mark Lyons has straight up said multiple times, he even said it to our chapter, I don't know everything that's in the toolkit, and he wrote the damn thing, so they're not expecting you to memorize everything like the PMP exam would be, for example. So as far as studying goes, talking with people about it is awesome, but it's definitely not something that you have to be meeting up with people on a weekly basis to learn it.
Mm-hmm. So I took it through PMI with their online based training. I took it by myself. It's self-paced. They say it's about 6 hours. You can definitely sit through the training in one day, but there's a lot of information. So you can take your time with it. I think you have 60 days from the time that you start taking the training to take the exam. And the exam was, I want to say 50. Was it 50 questions?
Yep, it's 50 questions in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you take the course through an ATP, you get 60 days from when you finished the course. So basically it's a 2-day workshop. You get 60 days from when you're done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest not waiting the full 6, because the advice we got was to take it pretty, study for about 2 or 3 days and take it.
Yeah.
But do not sit on that one too long. And I think the questions were similar to the PMP, but not as hard as in depth. These are a little more cut and dry, I thought. That was just my opinion. But
yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of fooling and tricking with the words, like the PMP. It is, to Mike's point, a lot more to the point in the questions, but the questions are still difficult at some points, depending on what you get. So don't underestimate the exam and say, oh, well, this is going to be fine. Definitely take your time, study, review the materials, keep the materials fresh, because it is a lot of new material. Even though it builds off of the PMP, it is still a lot of new material that you need to learn about, because not only are you doing the PMP stuff, but you are diving into supporting the product owner, supporting the organization at a higher level than what the PMP normally teaches you. So there's a lot of new terms, like you're talking about value stream and other things that the PMP really just touched on, but this is more diving deeper into it, helping the product owner how to groom their backlog, working with teams. So you're working with a whole lot of different entities than you are with just the PMP.
Yeah, and I just dropped a link into the chat here in Zoom for it's PMI's Disciplined Agile Knowledge Check. So basically, if you take that and you can get a 75 or greater, then you're probably ready to go and take the DA SSM class, right? Which, because of the way the progression set up, to me, that tells me that that's probably a decent like knowledge level for going and taking the DASM test and being okay on it, right? Basically, because if you can get above 75% on that, they're telling you to bypass the DASM and go straight to the DASSM. So if you're trying to get like an idea of how they write questions, that's a decent starting point. And that's something that PMI just has on there, right? So it's in the chat here in Zoom. But if you go to the DASSM like certification page and scroll to the bottom, there's a link for it in there too.
Tina also asked a question about, is there a big lift to qualify to take the course and be allowed to test? Like, do you have to have your PMP?
Nope. So basically, if you want to get a certification here with Discipline Agile, so Discipline Agile Scrum Master has 0 experience requirements or anything like that. You can just sign up for a course, then you have to take the test. Basically, the only requirement is you have to actually take the course through PMI. They tie them together. So Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master, you have to have 2 years of experience. Last time I checked, they weren't actually verifying that, and there was not an application set up for that. So what I got from PMI when I asked, right, because that struck me as weird, was for early adopters, they're not really asking questions about it right now. So you can kind of take them without having a whole lot of experience. So PMI is being kind of weird about that. But lost my train of thought there. You should have about 2 years of experience in Agile to take the DASSM. Once you get into the DAVSC, the DAC, DAVSC, the 2 like higher level certs, you have to have the DASSM. Okay, so that's kind of where the certification requirements come into play. But for DASM or DASSM, you don't have to have any kind of certifications already.
So another thing really cool about the DASM certification is that when you're collecting PDUs for your PMP, you're also collecting PDUs for your DASM. So is it only technical you can get with your DASM, or is it all of them?
Yeah, I don't think they have the like triangle. I think they only take technical, but that's actually true of all PMI certifications. So like I have the RMP and everything else. Mm-hmm. Any PDUs you guys get, PMI automatically applies them to everything you have.
Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about saying, oh, well, I need like triple the courses now because I've got all these certifications. Nope. They count across the board and they calculate them automatically for you. So even when you're claiming your own PDUs for say stuff that they don't report for you in your self-report, it will still calculate it for you, which is fantastic.
And you only need 7 to maintain your DASM. Which
that's 7 a year though.
7 a year. Sorry. Yeah, every year. 7 a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But so Devin, to the point when you said early adopters, is it PMI's goal to shelve the ACP for exchange of the DASM and the Senior Scrum Master? Or?
No, they cover different things. So the DASM, DASSM, they cover specifically Discipline Agile. The PMI ACP is a generalized overview of Agile. So they're not planning to replace it. They're just saying like they meet different needs, right? Like you go through the PMI ACP if you're trying to get into Agile, or you've got a little bit of experience in Agile and you're just trying to show that you know generally what Agile is and you know of the different practices that are out there. You get DASM, DASSM if you're leading teams and you want to show that you have a toolkit under your belt.
Tamara Jones has a question. Would you recommend the MSPM or MBA in PM?
So it kind of depends on where you want to go, right? So like the MSPM, like I said, is a lot more, at least at George Washington, right, is a lot more data driven and data analysis heavy. So it's actually falls under the School of Decision Sciences. So it's much more of a data analysis, planning, and all of the more analytical side of being a project manager than anything else. Where the MBA is kind of more general, business, and then you've got your PM stuff mixed in there. I went for the MSPM because I already had my bachelor's I have a bachelor's of science in business, so I didn't see the advantage of doing more business focused stuff. So I went for the MSPM. You can, there's pros to both. I like the MSPM more than I like the idea of the MBA with the PM, though, personally, but that's just me. And if you go so at least at George Washington, you can do them both in parallel, and you have credits that count for both. So you can do an MBA and the MSPM together, and they merge your credit requirements. So
Nice.
only reason I didn't do that is because the GI Bill doesn't pay for that.
I have just one quick question. Who is Moto E6? Just so I make sure that I have everybody accounted for. Moto E6. It looks like a cell phone. So Tina, I know what yours is, so you don't have to worry about yours, but Moto E6. Okay, I'll try again later. Does anybody have some more questions for Devin? I'd like to remind you guys that he works for, was it PM ProLearn?
Yep.
PM ProLearn. So if you do have any other additional questions about training or anything like that, Devin is a great resource, especially for, if something's not clear on the PMI website. He's definitely going to be our in-house resource to go to for that.
And then since PM ProLearn is one of the partnered authorized training providers, there is a discount for PMI CVC members if you guys decide to go through with PM ProLearn for any kind of certifications or anything like that. It's on the PMI CVC website, where you go for that kind of stuff. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If we're not the best person to go with for something, I'm not going to lie to you. So, yeah.
And feel free, you guys can reach out to me, VP of operations. You can also reach out to Stephanie, VP of education. All of our information is on the website, same as Devin. So if for some reason you can't find an email address or you need help, by all means, drop us a line and we can get you in connection with Devin. Awesome. One more time, anybody have any questions? No? Well, thank you so much for joining us, our first session of 2020. Devin, thank you so much for presenting to our group. And it was so lovely to see all of your faces again. I've missed you all since 2021.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody, take care. And remember that this will be posted on the PMI CVC website. So if you do want to come back and watch it, it will be available in a couple of days.
Thank you all.
very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. All right, it looks like Moto E6 is still up here. Moto E6, who are you?